Hi, everyone. It's me, Tim. Today I want to talk about how I almost made Wasteland 2 in the late 90s. Something I mentioned when I was having my chat with Scott Campbell. Kind of mentioned, oh, yeah, I almost, you know, Interplay wasn't going to get that license. And yeah, let me go into detail. So let me give context. So we talked about how some people on the team had played Wasteland. I would say of the core team, probably most of them had played Wasteland, but most of the people who played Wasteland had never finished it. They played it, saw how it worked. It was hard to play those games, early DOS games. It came out in '88, and even though this was only '94, it was only 6 years later, we'd gone through 286s and 386s and 486s, and machines were really fast. It was hard to play older games that didn't have rate limiters on them. But some of them had played, and we kind of had the idea of what it was like. But by the time we picked Post-Apoc, we had already started going off in our own direction. So when we got the news that we weren't going to get Wasteland, when Brian Fargo and Dick Lehrberg said they weren't going to be able to get the license, we weren't overly concerned. We were like, it would have been nice to have built on that, but we were already going off in our own direction. It was fine. So fast forward 3 years, and Fallout shipped. We're working on Fallout 2. I've already detailed that. I end up leaving. So I had no real idea of what to do next. I was basically decompressing after years of crunch. I would meet with Leonard and Jason. We talked about game ideas we wanted to do, but we kept thinking we'd end up getting hired at one of the local companies, if not in Orange County, then up in LA or down in San Diego. So this would have been late February, early March. And one day in the morning, I got a phone call. Now, this is back in the days of landlines and not much spam, so you tended to answer your phone. I picked it up, and there was a woman whose voice I didn't recognize on the other end. And she said, "Is this Timothy Kane?" I said, "Yes." And she sighed. She went, "Is this the Timothy Kane that made Fallout?" And I went, "Yes." And she was like, "Oh, thank goodness." She goes, "I've been calling every Timothy Kane, Tim Kane, and T Kane in Orange County, LA County, and San Diego County looking for you. You're a hard person to find." And I was like, "Okay." And she said, "Someone wants to talk to you." And I got past to someone. And I should tell you this too. I took notes while we were talking on a pad that I kept next to my phone for just that reason. And I remember I wrote down the name of the person I was talking to, and all I remembered was it was like William or Walter or something, and I wrote W squiggle, so I really couldn't make it out. Unfortunately, I lost that piece of paper soon after the call. I had told Leonard and Jason about the call. And then for unrelated reasons, I'm not going to get into here and today and now. Oh my God, I'm Professor Frink. I was asked by Troika's lawyer to write down all the events I could remember from the time I handed in my resignation letter until Troika formed. And I did, and I wrote down this phone call event. So even though I don't have the original paper anymore, I'm pretty sure this is what happened because I talked to Leonard and Jason about it, and then I wrote it all down a few months later. So the woman who called passed me on to someone who I think his name was William. I looked up later. William Bing Gordon was the chief creative officer at EA. So I might have talked to him, but why he just didn't call himself Bing, I don't know. Anyway, it turned out that he and other people at Electronic Arts, who were the original publisher of Wasteland, Interplay was the developer at that point, they didn't like Interplay. He told me stories, but his main reason was he said, "We find them ungrateful for everything we did and a little pompous." So he told me they had been stringing them along, that EA had been stringing Interplay along all those months and had never intended to license Wasteland to them. They had no intention of ever doing it. And that was weird for me to hear because, I had been told all along, hey, this is likely going to happen. But since October, many of them at EA had played Fallout, and they loved Fallout. So he basically was looking for me when he heard that I left Interplay. He said, how would you like to make Wasteland 2 up here at EA? So he basically offered me a job, said I could set up a team. I did have to move up to the Bay Area, which is where EA was located. But I turned it down. I told him I turned it down because I felt like I had just made Wasteland 2 and it was Fallout. But the real reason I turned it down was I didn't really want to work for someone who had just jokingly described that business situation of, oh yeah, we just strung someone along for a month because we thought it would be funny. That's not exactly somebody I want as a boss. I mean, he probably thought, oh, you're probably angry at Fargo too. You love this story. But it just rubbed me the wrong way. So I turned it down. And I told Leonard and Jason that day what happened. And I had half expected them to go, oh no, pick up the phone, call him back. But they both went, yeah, that's right. Because we didn't even want to make, we didn't want to, of course, we had just walked away from Fallout 2, so why would we want to make Wasteland 2? But sometimes, I must admit, years later, I wonder what would have happened if I had accepted. I don't regret not taking the offer, but I do wonder what would have happened, because Wasteland 2 probably would have come out about the same time as Arcanum did. So that means there would have been a Wasteland 2 as far back as 2001. And I wonder what that would have been like. But certainly, my career would have gone in a different direction at EA. Never would have gotten Arcanum and Temple and Bloodlines. Would never have had a Troika. So I'm glad I didn't do it. But I have to admit, I wonder what things would have been like if I had made Wasteland 2. So anyway, that's what I was referring to. That was the story I was referring to when I was talking to Scott Campbell.